You open your eyes as the mist still hangs outside the wooden window. The crowing of roosters echoes from the distant farm, mixed with the faint sound of farmers' footsteps hurrying to the fields. The smell of cold ashes and old straw hangs in the air. Your stomach rumbles, not just from hunger, but from something deeper, memories, or perhaps stories, buried beneath the soil of time. You're in the 14th century, a world without electricity, without machines, and without fast food. Everything you eat has to be grown, harvested, dried, ground, boiled, baked, by hand, by human labor. War, disease, unpredictable weather, all are constant enemies. But above all, there is one thing that determines human survival: food crops. You are not a knight or a monk. You are just a man, a soul in a medieval body, trying to understand how our ancestors survived. And you will begin your journey with the first seeds, the 10 silent kings of the medieval table. Part 1. Wheat, bread, and flesh and blood. You bend over a field of golden wheat, shimmering in the morning sun. Each stalk of wheat sways like a whisper from the earth. Your hands are calloused, your sickle rusty, but your cuts are decisive. Harvesting the wheat is the work of the entire village, men, women, children. The wheat is more than just food. It is a reason to live. You learn to thresh the grain with a pestle on a stone, and then use the wind to separate the chaff. The tiny grain of gold is then carried to the mill. A giant will turn by water, or sometimes by human power. The grinding sound of the stone echoes, and you feel as if you are touching the heart of the world. In your village, bread is more than just food. It is currency. It is a wedding gift. It is an offering to the gods. And sometimes, it is the only thing standing between a family and death. Good harvests, you can bake soft, white bread. Bad harvests, you have to mix in bark, clay, or wild seeds to get enough flour. The bread is heavy, black, hard to swallow, but it is still bread. You remember the harvest festival. People danced around the first sheaf of grain, hanging the dry grain over their doors as talismans. Children chewed on the crumbs, and mothers closed their eyes in prayer as they placed the bread on the altar. You realized wheat was faith transformed into food. You have seen a crop fail. The rains have failed. The ground has cracked. The crops have fallen and died. You helped bury the first children who died of hunger. Then the old people. In the famine, you have seen people fight over a piece of bread. Someone was hanged for stealing unripe grain. Hunger is a lying beast, and it makes people fearful. When the plague comes, you see the fields fallow. No one harvests. No one bakes. Bread becomes a treasure hidden in chests, divided like gold. Some eat the unmilled grain. Some chew the grass. But wheat also brings hope. You meet an orphan girl, holding the only bag of seeds her father had left. She replants the burnt land. Every morning, you and she tend each small clump. When the wheat sprouts, no one smiles. Everyone just looks at each other, then silently water the plants as if watering their own souls. You pass through other lands, lands of the nobility. They eat white bread, fluffy, light as a cloud. The poor never touch it. Refined wheat becomes a status symbol. And you only need bread that can save your life. You once worked in a monastery. The monks baked bread every day, offered it on the altar, and distributed it to the poor. You felt the sacredness in the way they touched the dough. The bread in the cold stone walls was the body of Christ. And in your heart, it was hope in a world of chaos. One stormy night, you hold a piece of dry bread, looking out at the empty fields. Suddenly you understand. Empires fall, kings pass away, but bread remains. Part 2, Barberry, Food of the Poor. You learn early that wheat is not for everyone. There are seasons, people, and lands where white bread is a dream. While the rich still distinguish between noble flowers, the poor have had to resort to something harder, coarser, less sweet, but enduring to the end: barley. You first encounter barley on the edge of the village, where the land is dry and wind-whipped and where grass cannot grow. It is a rough field, coarse-grained and hard-stalked. The old farmer just shakes his head when you ask him why he doesn't grow wheat. Wheat doesn't grow here, he says, but barley does. You bend down and pick up the small, sharp seeds that could cut your skin. But within each seed is compressed energy, the thing that helps people survive winter, war, and oblivion. You are invited to your first dinner at a widow's house. On the table is a thick pot of barley porridge, without any aroma or meat. But when you put the spoon to your lips, the taste is strong in a rough way, not from the palate, but from memory. You realize this is not a delicacy. This is a confirmation. We are alive. When the plague swept through, the wheat fields lay fallow. So many people died that there was no one left strong enough to plow them. But the barley grew, as if it did not care whether the people lived or died. You and the rest of the people reaped it. No machines, no finesse, just your hands and your faith. In winter, you see the old woman grinding barley with a stone, her hands shaking but steady. From that powder she brews weak beer, not to get drunk, but to kill the bacteria in the water. Children are given weak beer instead of water, and you understand, for the first time, why barley is called the food of perseverance. You wander through the mountains, where wheat cannot grow because of the cold and the high altitude. White bread is unknown there. They eat flat barley cakes, baked on hot stones, as gray and cracked as the earth they live on. But everyone is healthy. You realize simplicity is not inferior, it is sufficient. Once you witnessed a tax collection. The Lord ordered wheat to be gathered for war. The poor people protested. A mother shouted, "We have no wheat, only barley." The soldiers did not bother to answer. They passed by the barley field as if it were invisible. You think it's a blessing. What the strong consider worthless is sometimes the only thing that protects the weak. No one steals the barley. No one taxes the barley. And so it grows freely. It feeds freely. You remember one winter night when you and the villagers sat around the fire, sharing the last bowl of barley porridge. Everyone got a little. No one complained. The children fell asleep. The old people just stared at the fire. One of them whispered, "Tomorrow will be better." And you knew it wasn't because of the words. It was because the porridge was still warm in their bellies. Barley is not fancy. It does not have the aroma of white flour or the praise of Scripture, but is a quiet foundation, a bridge that carries people through the harsh seasons. No matter how far you travel, you will remember the feeling of biting into each raw grain, the taste of earth, sweat, and hope. You once met a man who lost his entire family to starvation. When you asked him why he still planted barley, he smiled sadly and said, "Because I am alive to plant." That night, you lie listening to the wind whistling through the thatched roof. Under your pillow, you hide a bag of barley seeds, not because you are afraid of hunger, but because you know. Sometimes, salvation comes not in the form of kings, but in the form of a tiny, dry, unloved grain. Part 3. Oats, the power of the forgotten. You follow the nomads into the northern forests, where the soil is hard and the weather is cold. Neither wheat nor barley can grow here. Instead, oats, a wild grass, grow as a symbol of patience and endurance. At first, the tiny, rough oats seem insignificant. You think they are just for livestock, but then you learn that for the frontier people, oats are a shield against hunger and the harsh cold. you are invited into a small family home, where a blazing fire casts a shadow over the mother's tanned face. She gently brings out a bowl of steaming, thick oatmeal. You sip it, savoring the light sweetness and earthy aroma. It is not a luxury, but armor in a snowstorm. You see people harvesting oats with rough hands, with natural dexterity, and drying them on the roofs. They grind the grain, then mix it with water to make porridge, make cakes, sometimes the only thing that helps them survive the long winter. One morning, as you walk along a muddy road, you see a farmer with a heavy sack of oats slung over his shoulder. He says, "This grain is not as flashy as wheat, but it is strength. When the soil is poor, when the weather is cold, when the people are weak, the oats will stand." You learn how to turn oats into many different things: porridge, flatbreads, even horse feed. You realize that oats not only feed people, but also provide draft power, the life force for all life on the farm. You witness the story of a widow raising 3 children in the bitter cold. Oats are the only food she grows. Each grain she tends is like planting her future. You see in her eyes an unyielding determination. You see hardship too. Poor soil, failing crops, looming famine. But the oats still grow, a reminder that even in the darkest of circumstances, life can still find a way to survive. At night, you sit by the fire, listening to stories about oats, the grain of the mountain people, the grain of life and resilience. You understand that the most overlooked plants can be the most important, and in your heart rises a deep respect for oats, the humble grain that quietly nourishes not only the body, but also the soul of the frontier people. Part 4, Peas. From small seeds to big meals. You hold in your hand tiny peas, plump and pale green like pearls. They seem fragile, but they contain magical power, enough to feed a family through the toughest months. Peas are a gift from the earth, but also a gift of time and effort. You learn how to grow beans in hedges, climbing on makeshift wooden trellises in your vegetable garden. They don't need rich soil or much care, just a little sun and rain. Peas can withstand harsh climates, providing food when other plants haven't had time to grow. When the cold winter sets in, peas become an important source of protein. You sit by the fire, making a thick pea soup with a few slices of turnip, sometimes adding some onions and garlic, the precious spices of the poor. The aroma rises, warming you on long, cold nights. Do you remember going to the village market and seeing old women carrying bags of dried peas to sell in exchange for some salt and oil? They said that these peas can be preserved for a long time without fear of mold or spoilage. A meal with just a few peas is enough to ease the nagging hunger. You see farmers trading beans as a precious commodity. They are not only food, but also a means of trade, even a means of keeping peace between villages. A bean today is a meal tomorrow, they say. You hear the story of a young mother who was devastated by a failed wheat crop, but with peas she was able to stay healthy and raise her children. Each pea was a promise that life would go on, despite the storms. Did you know that peas help enrich the soil? They take nitrogen from the air and put it in the soil, so other plants can thrive the following season. They are not just food. They are soil protectors, an investment in the future. At a spring ceremony, you see villagers sowing peas together, singing and dancing around the new beds of soil. It is the joy of life, of rebirth after the long winter. You bite into a dried pea, feeling the slight sweetness, the earthiness, the taste of life that never stops. Peas teach you that power lies not only in big things, but also in small, quiet things. Part 5. Rye, the flavor of resilience. You see fields of rye stretching out under gray skies. the stalks bent by cold winds and poor soil. Rye is not a plant of fertile plains or warm summers, but a plant of endurance, of surviving cold winters and poor soil. You learn how to harvest rye from people in the far north, where the ground is hard as rock, where wheat cannot grow. The rye grows thorny and black, but it is the main source of food for an entire community. You remember the first time you tasted rye bread, heavy, coarse, and slightly sour, a far cry from the soft white bread you were used to. But you also felt in each bite the warmth and resilience of the people here, who never gave in to the harsh nature. In folklore, rye is called poor man's bread, but you know it's a symbol of perseverance. When blizzards blanket the fields, when crops fail, rye survives as a sign of hope. You see mothers cooking rye porridge for their children, old people chewing on dry bread, but still keeping their strength to work in the fields. You realize that rye not only nourishes the body, but also nourishes the indomitable spirit. One night, you and the villagers sit around the fire, listening to stories of the famine years. Rye was the only grain left in the barn, and how it saved many from starvation. There's laughter, tears, but above all gratitude for the humble grain. You'll also learn how to turn rye into a variety of cakes, porridges, and even wine. A dark liquor that tastes of the land and time. It's not something to get drunk on, but something to keep you warm and connected on long, cold nights. Gradually, you come to understand that each food plant is more than just food. It is part of the story of life, of history, and of the people who loved, worked, and suffered to make it possible. You stand in the middle of a field of rye, the cold wind blowing across your face, and feel a deep appreciation for the resilience you have witnessed. Part 6, Rice, the Pearl of the Orient. You step into the fertile land of the East, where the rice fields stretch far and wide, the rice grains like shining pearls in the morning sunlight. Rice, or rice, is not only food, but also a symbol of life, of culture, of hope and aspiration for abundance. You see farmers tending to each rice bush, from sowing seeds to watering, cutting and drying. Every step is done meticulously, as if they were preserving the most precious treasure. You are invited to eat your first meal here. Pure white, sweet, fragrant rice grains, wrapped around each warm grain. You feel the softness, the light sweetness, and the feeling of fullness spreading throughout your body. Unlike bread or hard porridge, rice is like a promise of abundance and peace. You listen to the story of an old farmer who has lived through many famines and wars. He says that rice is the thing that Eastern people always cherish the most, because as long as they have rice, all hardships will pass. You see the vitality of rice in every drop of water on the leaves, in every ray of sunlight that passes through the fields. Rice fields not only provide food, but also are the meeting place of nature and people, the heartbeat of life. You also learn that rice can be prepared in many ways, from plain rice, porridge, cakes to fragrant rice wine. Each dish carries love, care, and faith in the future. In particular, you see the harvest festival here, traditional rituals honoring rice, praying for a bountiful harvest, for a prosperous life. You realize that rice is not only a grain of food, but also the soul of culture. Do you remember the moonlit nights, sitting with your family, sharing a meal with fragrant, soft rice, your heart filled with gratitude and peace? Here, rice is the thread that connects people, a symbol of eternal life. Part 6, Rice, the Pearl of the Orient. You step into the fertile land of the East, where the rice fields stretch far and wide, the rice grains like shining pearls in the morning sunlight. Rice, or rice, is not only food, but also a symbol of life, of culture, of hope and aspiration for abundance. You see farmers tending to each rice bush, from sowing seeds to watering, cutting and drying. Every step is done meticulously, as if they were preserving the most precious treasure. You are invited to eat your first meal here. Pure white, sweet, fragrant rice grains, wrapped around each warm grain. You feel the softness, the light sweetness, and the feeling of fullness spreading throughout your body. Unlike bread or hard porridge, rice is like a promise of abundance and peace. You listen to the story of an old farmer who has lived through many famines and wars. He says that rice is the thing that Eastern people always cherish the most, because as long as they have rice, all hardships will pass. You see the vitality of rice in every drop of water on the leaves, in every ray of sunlight that passes through the fields. Rice fields not only provide food, but also are the meeting place of nature and people, the heartbeat of life. You also learn that rice can be prepared in many ways, from plain rice, porridge, cakes to fragrant rice wine. Each dish carries love, care, and faith in the future. In particular, you see the harvest festival here, traditional rituals honoring rice, praying for a bountiful harvest, for a prosperous life. You realize that rice is not only a grain of food, but also the soul of culture. Do you remember the moonlit nights, sitting with your family, sharing a meal with fragrant, soft rice, your heart filled with gratitude and peace? Here, rice is the thread that connects people, a symbol of eternal life. Part 8. Soybeans, a valuable food and protein source. You enter lush gardens where soybean plants stand tall, their broad leaves spread out like little shields to protect the soil. Soybeans, small in size, are a valuable source of protein, giving life to medieval people during the lean months. The farmer shows you how to grow soybeans. Plant the seeds in well-tilled soil, water them, and tend them with love and patience. Soybeans not only feed people, but also enrich the soil with their nitrogen-fixing properties, making it more fertile for future crops. You taste soy dishes, from boiled beans, bean soups, to simple fermented dishes. You feel the characteristic flavor, slightly sweet, nutty, and very nutritious. Soybeans are an important source of protein in times when meat and fish are not always available. You meet women in the village who use soybeans to make soy milk, a nutritious food for children and the elderly. This helps you understand more about the indispensable role of soybeans in daily life. You see the villagers harvesting soybeans together, carrying heavy sacks on their shoulders. The soybeans are carefully preserved and shared for use throughout the year, especially during the harsh winter. You hear stories of famine years when soybeans were the only thing that kept villagers alive. Soybeans were not just food, but a symbol of sharing and community unity. You also learn how soybeans are used as animal feed, helping to keep livestock healthy and thus providing more food for humans. This makes you realize the wonderful circularity of medieval rural life. At night, you sit by the flickering fire, listening to the elders talk about the origin and value of soybeans. You feel that in those small beans, there's both the power of nature and the perseverance of man. Part 9. Peanuts, ground peanuts, and the story of migration. You step into a new land, where the little peanuts begin to tell their adventure story, from the remote fields of America, through long sea journeys, to becoming an indispensable part of medieval European life. You watch the humble peanut plants sprouting from the ground like hard-working little soldiers, stretching themselves to the sun. Although not native, peanuts were introduced as experimental crops and quickly gained acceptance for their drought tolerance and high yield. You are invited to enjoy peanut dishes, from crispy roasted peanuts to cakes and rich bean soups. The rich, nutty flavor will make you remember forever, and you will realize that peanuts are not only a source of energy, but also a joy in your daily meals. You hear about the traders who carried peanuts across oceans, through the Silk Roads and far-flung trade routes. The peanut, though small, carries with it a story of cultural exchange and the changing ways in which people farmed and survived. You witness the efforts of the local people as they learn to grow and care for peanuts, a new crop that requires different techniques than traditional crops. Their perseverance and creativity is a testament to the strong vitality of the human race. You hear stories of devastating droughts when peanuts became a staple food, saving families from starvation. Peanuts are a tree of hope, a tree of new life in barren lands. You will also discover the role of peanuts in improving the soil, helping the soil retain moisture and nutrients, creating the premise for the next crops. Peanuts not only feed people but also feed the soil, creating a sustainable cycle of nature and humans. You end the long day with dinner by the fire, enjoying hot peanut cakes, and thinking about the long story of the little seeds, from far away to here, from strange to familiar. Part 10, Barley, Food for Working People. You enter vast fields where the barley stalks stretch out in the wind, their sturdy stalks shining golden like the hats of rustic workers. Barley was an indispensable grain, especially for the hard-working people who laid the foundations of medieval life. You see the farmer, his calloused hands, eagerly harvesting the barley, carrying the heavy sheaves on his shoulders. You hear the clatter of knives, the sound of footsteps in the fields, blending into the music of diligence and perseverance. You enjoy a simple but rich meal, barley bread, thick porridge, and barley wine imbued with the taste of heaven and earth. Barley not only nourishes the body, but also gives the worker mental strength during long, hard days. You hear of failed harvests when wheat or rice failed to grow, but barley persevered, bringing hope and life to the community. The strength of barley is its amazing ability to adapt to difficult conditions. You see at small parties or important occasions, barley wine is shared as a symbol of solidarity and gratitude to the earth. Each sip of wine is a wish for health and peace for everyone. You realize that barley was more than just food. It was the companion and fuel for farmers, blacksmiths, and builders who helped build the foundations of medieval society. You will also learn how barley is used in animal husbandry, helping to create a supplementary food source for livestock, thereby creating a sustainable food chain for the whole community. As the night falls, you sit by the fire, watching the barley sway gently in the wind, filled with appreciation and gratitude. Barley teaches you that in simplicity and diligence, the true power of life is nurtured and preserved. You have come with me on a journey of 10 amazing food plants, from the humble pea to the sturdy barley. Each plant is not just a source of food, but also a story of life, of culture, and of the people who cultivated and cared for it to survive in the difficult medieval period. These crops helped medieval people overcome poverty, war, and natural disasters. They are a testament to human perseverance, creativity, and strength in the face of adversity. Each seed is a promise of the future, of bountiful harvests and a comfortable life. Thank you for joining me on this journey, covering the stories, flavors, and lessons that food plants have to offer. I hope you will always appreciate the small but priceless values of nature and keep your faith in the power of life. Sweet dreams, and see you in other stories.